Welcome to the advanced session on understanding the document ingester with knowledge-aware consultant Steve Boisvert. Yay, take it away.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to talk a little bit about the document ingester. This is a feature that we introduced last year. I did a presentation on it at last year's IKAA conference. We've had quite a bit of feedback on the document ingester. As we mentioned last year, it was in a beta format. So, functionality was pretty limited. It since has been rolled out at many customer instances. I know many of you have already started to use it, and I want to kind of bring awareness to some of the things that keep coming up over and over, and helping people understand, really when should we use the document ingester? What is it? How does it work? What documents work best, and which ones to kind of avoid? So with that, let's kind of hop in here and take a deeper dive. So for any of you that weren't part of the IKAA conference last year and potentially don't know about the document ingester, here's what it is. So it's actually a tool that allows a user to input a PDF file, and it extracts text and images from that PDF file in order to help them create basically knowledge packets from the knowledge that's contained within that document. There's some particular AI technology that's utilized that helps us categorize the information that's extracted from the PDF document. And it was really developed at the time to address two particular use cases. One was customer requirement documents, huge documents. I mean, hundreds of pages where, we had different customers copy pasting the individual requirements out of those documents to create knowledge packets. And then we also had another use case where a particular group was being delivered PDF files for external standards like MIL standards or regulatory standards that they needed to incorporate into their knowledge repository and make sure they're compliant to. But again, these were huge documents, so we needed a way that we could systematically decompose a document and generate knowledge packets. And from that, we created the document ingester. Now, with that, maybe you don't have PDF files. That's okay. The document ingester is only one of 5 ways to create knowledge packets within Auros IQ. So the document ingester, is a great tool, but it's not for everyone. It's not for every use case. So one of the things I just wanted to point out with this is we have many other ways we can bulk import using Excel. Some individuals and some customers, you may be able to get your knowledge packets from a third-party knowledge source. Like we've had the American Bureau of Shipping on the at the conference a couple times talking about how they can provision knowledge from their instance through partner sharing. So some of our OEMs are sharing knowledge to some of the tier 1 suppliers. So and that through that you don't even have to create your own knowledge packets; they can be shared to you. And then lastly, if none of these other things are working for you, you can use the WYSIWYG tool and you can create your knowledge individually. So real quickly, those are the 5 ways you can create knowledge packets. Today, we're just going to talk about the one. So let's talk about how it works. Let me kind of break it down a little bit deeper here. I talked a little bit before. It's a systematic thing that it decomposes PDF files. So here's how it works. So we have our knowledge source, in the form of a PDF file. We bring that into Auros IQ, into this thing we call a document ingester. And I have that represented here with a little shredder. And basically what it does is when we bring that into the document ingester, we identify parsing queues to understand how we can systematically break down those documents to create knowledge packets. Once we've created knowledge packets, we have an optional item that we can utilize to categorize and classify the knowledge packets, which we call IQ suggestions. So if the knowledge packet is broken down and extracted from these documents, IQ suggestions will look at the contents of those knowledge packets and say, I know what you are. I think you are related to this particular workflow, or this particular material, or part of this particular group. And it starts to suggest values to help categorize that knowledge. Once all that stuff gets categorized, it's in the community of practice, we can then provision that in the form of an assessment control to different workflows. So that's how it all works. Kind of a little bit more detailed version of how it works is I have a sample document here. A sample construction specification document. This is very common in shipbuilding. And oftentimes what happens is we want to break these documents down. A lot of these requirements need to get utilized in different workflows. And so what was happening is, we had individuals copy pasting out of these documents, creating knowledge packets. So the important piece of this document in terms of what we want to capture is right here in the center, right? It's defined in this particular area that's defined by that box. And those are the things we want to break down into knowledge packets. So to do that, we need to tell the document adjuster what do we want to use, at what level of granularity do we want to break it down with. So we use these parsing cues. So because this document has structured formatting, I could say use this top level item. That's a parsing cue that I want to utilize. Maybe the second level here, this 510 overflow, that could be a parsing cue. Or if I want to go extremely granular, I could go all the way down to the individual numbered items, and those could be my parsing cue. And depending on my parsing cue, what's going to happen is the document adjuster is going to systematically start collecting the knowledge from the areas that are defined in that parsing cue based on those parsing cues and turn those into knowledge packets. So that's basically what's happening. We use the structure of the knowledge to start breaking it down. So when we get into the document adjuster, there's a couple things that I always ask myself before I start looking at, whether or not I want to extract that information using the document adjuster or not. Maybe I should use one of the other 5 options. The first thing I always ask myself is, does the source file have structured formatting? Right? Is there structure there that I can utilize and create as parsing cues? If it does, I want to know, is the primary knowledge, is it represented in a consistent location? Right? And that example I just went through was all in the center of the document. Very easy to systematically go down that document and extract that knowledge. And lastly, does that document have a repeatable format? So these are the 3 key things that I ask before I even ever open up the document adjuster. And if that document matches these 3 things, then I will take it in there. And some of the documents that match those criteria are, here's an example like I had of ABS rules. You can see it has structure. We have different multi-level formatting. We have different text heights. We have different text. Many different features of this document will allow us to create a parsing cue that the document adjuster can identify and extract knowledge. It's repeatable. The primary knowledge is located in the same location. It's not all over. It's a very good example of a document that we could easily break down. And if we have time today, I'm actually going to break down this document. Another one is a Navy standard item. This is an example of a mill standard. The mill standards are fantastic. They do a fantastic job of staying consistent. They're very well structured. You can see here, this one's a hierarchical type of structure. It's broken down. Again, we have some structure that we can identify parsing cues. And then lastly, that one we just looked at, another good example, we have a lot of structure here. We have different font colors, font sizes, different levels that we can create structure. So the inverse of that is kind of look at some of the things that I've been asked to put into the document adjuster that just do not work. And we're going to discuss why. So one of the things that I get asked a lot is, I have all of these drawings that I have PDF files of. Can I just run those through the document adjuster? And my answer is yes, but what's the goal? Like, where's the knowledge you want to get out of that drawing? And oftentimes it's like, well, I have some knowledge that's buried inside of some of the call outs, and that kind of varies throughout the document. Sometimes they say, the notes, I want to extract the notes. And actually, that's one that could actually be done. But I think there's other mechanisms to create knowledge packets that would be better than trying to force it through the document ingester. So one of the things I would say is if you have knowledge that you're trying to extract from, a set of drawings, it's probably best to avoid because they typically are not consistent. They're not repeatable. And so definitely something that you might want to reconsider. Another one I've had is I you receive something like this, where it's a huge process, and I know there's critical knowledge embedded somewhere in that process. But again, because it's not consistent, it's really not structured. I mean, there is definitely structure to this document, but it's not in a repeatable format that I can tell a document ingester, look in this particular area and extract that throughout all of these different files. This is definitely one that there's critical knowledge in, but it was best to just use the bulk import using the Excel function to create knowledge packets using some of this knowledge. And then lastly, we get stuff like this a lot where there is actually, it's well formatted. It's a well formatted PowerPoint file. However, the location of the primary knowledge varies throughout the document. It's not in a consistent location. And unfortunately, the document ingester is just not sophisticated enough to know to bounce around to the different sections to extract knowledge. So with that, with all the stuff to avoid, let's talk about some of the good features about the document ingester. Last year I mentioned there's 2 use cases we cannot handle. One of them being tables. If you had knowledge that was, in the form of a table within a PDF file, the document ingester would just grab all that data and kind of group it all together. That no longer happens. We can handle table data. The other thing is we now handle scanned image PDF files. So if your knowledge source is delivered to you, it's not something you created, and it happens to be a scanned image, we can now read those in and then process those documents. So let's kind of hop in a little bit with the details. The document ingester is a community of practice admin function. You'll see it in the community of practice admin. It's under content management. And we have the option here to create a new run, basically to generate some new knowledge, import a template. Let's say you've run this document in before, you can save a template. That way you don't have to reestablish the parsing queue. And then you can see that thing, that third option, convert image to text. So that's what you would use if your source file is a scanned image. It's going to get converted to text. It's going to resolve the skew correction. So if the scanned image is kind of wonky, it'll fix all that, and then it'll allow you to bring that into the document ingester and parse it out. So we're going to look at 2 demonstrations real quickly here. So I'm going to use that same construction specification. I'm going to do a quick and dirty alphanumeric structure, and then we're going to try to look at one of the ABS documents. And the reason I want to do this one for you guys is because it has table data, and you can see how that functions. So with that, I'm going to hop out of PowerPoint, and we are going to hop into Auros. So I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to go into my demonstration community of practice. And what you're going to see here is I have 0 KPACs. I have 0 KPACs found. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the document ingester to bring in all of the data, all of the knowledge from our source files. So as I mentioned, the document ingester is an admin function. So I'm going to go into admin. I am going to the community of practice admin, and I'm going to document ingester. Once I'm on my document ingester, I do not have a template saved. So I'm going to tell it to create new. Once I tell it to create a new, then it's going to ask me, all right, what PDF file do I want to use? And I'm going to choose that. And the first one we're going to use is our max power vessel construction specification. And what you will see once I bring in that file, I get a representation of that document here. So it's 21 pages long. You can kind of see the formatting. And the real bulk of the knowledge within the document starts on page 4. So the document ingester is 7 steps that I need to complete before I can parse anything out. The first thing it's going to ask me, what page ranges do I want to do? Maybe I don't want to do the entire document. For this particular example, we're going to say I want to use from page 4 to page 21. And I'm going to hit apply. Once I hit apply, you can see I get a green check mark, meaning I've completed that step. My second step says, all right, identify the header. Identify the zones of the document that I don't want to consider, that the core knowledge isn't a part of. So for that, I'm going to draw a quick box around the header, and I'm going to hit apply. So now I have another checkbox. Step 2 is complete. Third thing I'm going to do is define my footer. So it's at the lower region of my document that I don't want the document ingester to consider. So my footer is now complete. Step 4, the most important part of this whole process, is defining the parsing queues. The first step of that is to really identify whether we're going to systematically parse the document. So I can choose automatic or manual. Manual meaning I just draw some boxes around the contents I want to make a KPAC of. But for our demonstration, we're using automatic. We're going to systematically parse this whole document. The second step I need to do is I got to tell the document ingester where is the core knowledge. Where's that core knowledge it needs to collect, right? This is the information it's going to put in the description of the knowledge packet. And so what I'm doing now is I'm telling it it's within these bounds, and it's this type of font, it's in this location, and the document ingester will remember that. The next thing I'm going to do is define the parsing queues. So with the parsing queues, we have two different types. We have alphanumeric and we have hierarchical. Now this document is very much alphanumeric. So I'm going to use an alphanumeric structure, and I'm going to have it just pick this level, right? And I can do any one of I'm going to the lowest section. I could do multiple. I could do at this section, or at the lowest level. So I'm chilling, go to the lowest level and collect the information and turn it into knowledge packets. So I hit apply and proceed. I'm done with that step. Step 5 is there any metadata that's contained in the document that I want to attach to the knowledge packets that I'm about to create? So for that, for this particular example, I have an extended element called document title that I want to collect from the document that I want every knowledge packet to have. It's on every page. It's in the same position within that page, and I can find representation of my document title right down here. Here's Max Power Marine. I'm going to say this is my document title. I'm going to hit apply and proceed. So I'm through step 5. Step 6 is if there's images in this document, I need to know where the title is, if it's at the top or the bottom. And this one doesn't have it, so I'm just going to hit apply, and now we're going to process this document. So at this point, it's taking those parsing queues, and it's going through that entire document and starting to extract that knowledge. It's going to put it into a table for me to review. So we're doing from page 4 to page 21. As you'll see here, it takes just a couple seconds. It's going to result in roughly 100 knowledge packets. So in the matter of just a couple minutes, we have decomposed that document. So here is the decomposition. I can see it in the table. I can see samples of all the information that is extracted. Here's the description that is pulled out of the document. Here's that document title I told it to find and attach to each of the knowledge packets. And I have a representation of where that knowledge came out of the original source document. So at this point, let's kind of look and see how many there are. I believe there's 98. Yep, I'm about to create 98 knowledge packets. So I'm going to tell it to proceed. And at this point, I can create a template. If I'm ever going to run this document in, or a document similar to it, I create a template, and I don't have to go through all those steps. I just say use this template. But for this particular demo, I'm going to tell it create without saving a template. And now it's creating these knowledge packets. It's going to put it into that community of practice, my demo community that I have, that I created specifically for this. And it's telling me I created 98 knowledge packets. If I exit admin and go into our community, and we can see those representations. So I now have 98 knowledge packets that represent the requirements from it within my my construction specification document. I have a representation of where this knowledge came out of my source document, and I have metadata in the form of what's the document title. Now, I could have done a lot more metadata, but for this particular demo, we just have the max power marine as the document title listed. So very simple. I mean, I was able to systematically decompose a document very quickly. We created 98 KPACs in the matter of just a couple minutes. And so that's a pretty good example of how the alphanumeric option can decompose a document of that type. I think I have just a couple more minutes, and I think I can get this last one in very quickly. So I'm going to do another one. Let's do another run, but this time we're going to do hierarchical. And for that, I'm going to use the ABS document that I showed in my presentation. This is a huge document, 336 pages. But if we kind of go through here, it really doesn't start until page 20, right? This is when we start to get into the requirements that I want to capture. Now, this is very hierarchical. So I'm going to tell this is to do page 20 and page 21 for the interest of time, right? We're just going to extract just a small portion. Header, again, I got to choose my header, what to avoid. Footer, what to avoid. And then we're at the KPAC boundaries. So where's my description coming from? This area of the document. I'm going to tell it we're going to process in a hierarchical fashion, and I'm going to define my levels. So level 1 that I want to define is this first level here, right? This is level 1. Then I'm going to go to level 2. And level 2 has a delimiter. There's 1.1. So I want to be able to pick that up and detect that. So I'm going to tell it there's a delimiter there. And the text is mixed. So I'm going to say, all right, here's my sample for level 2. And let's just do one more level real quick, level 3. Level 3 also has a delimiter, and my structure is mixed. And I'm going to select the structure here. And it could be anywhere in the document. I'm going to choose this one. Now I'm done. I do that same element for document title. I'm going to say that it's a single page, that it's located at the same spot every page. There's some options there. If it's not, there's my document title, apply. I don't have images, and I'm going to tell it to process. So now it's not using that alphanumeric structure. It's using those levels that I defined. And what it's doing is looking at level 1. Did it find any information below level 1? Yes or no? And it starts to collect that information. And you can see it's decomposed that document now to the level of granularity that I defined in the levels for those hierarchies. So you can see 1, 1.1, 1.1.1. It's collected the document name like I asked it to, and it's telling me here's where I pulled that information out of the source file. We have a little bug here with the little green box not showing exactly where it needs to be, but you get the idea of how the document ingester works. Now I can just say proceed, and then now I'm creating those KPACs into my community of practice with very little effort. So it's an extremely powerful tool when the criteria matches. Kind of, is it structured? Is the core knowledge in a repeatable location? And so if some of these, if you answer yes to my questions, use the document ingester. If you're saying, well, no, some of those criteria don't match my documents, then there's plenty of other ways to create knowledge packets. And I'm sure one of the other ways will work just fine and be extremely beneficial. So with that, that's where I'm going to leave it for the end of my demonstration.
I'm going to ask you some questions. Yes,
Perfect.
we do. We have several. So the first one, would the document ingester recognize that table? It was many, many slides back, the shades of orange on an earlier page as she's asking if it will recognize that table as a value table.
It will not. So that is one, that's a very good question. So we do have other applications that we can create knowledge packets from. So like I mentioned, the ABS group, we have an XML translator that looks at their source files and then can create value tables from those source files. The document ingester doesn't do that. It doesn't understand that those formula actually represent something. So to the document ingester, it's just text.
Okay, we're going to keep going a little bit over because we do have a break until 3:25. Not crazy over, but I'll clip through. Next question. Well, this was kind of discussed within a thread, but okay, it's on the screen. So, did anybody try to import an MS project plan in the document ingester? The MS projects are well structured and can create the basis of a template, what tasks are needed, sequence, resource, and sometimes duration. And he's wanting to know if we can import an MS project in the team board Gantt wall or need to type line by line in Auros.
Yeah, that's actually not something for the document ingester. So bringing that into the document ingester would actually create knowledge packets out of those tasks. And if that was your intent, I still think the XLS import tool would be better suited to bring in those tasks and those processes instead of the document ingester. Now, in terms of whether or not we can bring that into the Gantt chart, I'm not sure. I know that those features on the Gantt wall have been changing dramatically, very frequently, and I'm not 100% sure we can bring in a Microsoft project, especially not in the project format. I think it would have to be in Excel format, even if we could. But that's something that I can follow up on and I can get back to you on.
Thank you, Steve. And well, okay, that segued into another question, but since this one's up, I'll jump to this one. Your first document had groupings. Could you auto link that to a KPAC EE if you had the need to group filter your created KPACs based on sections?
That's a good question. Yeah. So if we had an extended element, actually, and there's actually an option in the document ingester that says structure. It wants to know if there's an extended element that's related to the structure. And so what it'll do, it'll look at those groupings and then use those groupings as the value to put into that extended element. So you can create an extended element and link it to the different levels within a document. And those could represent groupings, so you can group it in your search results grid or whatever, however you want to view it.
Great. And yes, you had mentioned Excel in your last answer. So Colin is asking, will the document ingester cope with Excel documents, especially checklists?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one of the things that we're kind of talking about. So right now we're limited to PDF files. If you convert an Excel file into a PDF, then it'll read some of that stuff in and think it's a table if it meets kind of the criteria for a table. But one of the things that we're really kind of toying around is expanding the functionality into other document formats like Word documents and PowerPoint documents and Excel documents, just to be able to utilize some of the inherent structure that's embedded into those documents that don't exist inside of a PDF file. So it's something that we can't do now, but it's definitely something that we're looking towards integrating in the future.
Good stuff. So next question, I'm going to go forward. Is it possible to add new function to Doc Ingester to convert PDF to, I'm going to let you take the rest of that one. You want to just read it?
Oh, actually, I don't see it.
Oh, okay. So I'm just not totally sure. Do you see it?
Oh, into doors. So yeah, into like a requirement. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We don't have rec-if, but I do see there would be some value there. It's something we haven't thought of yet. Like I mentioned before, as different use cases and different organizations have tried the document ingester, we've been getting all flooded with different suggestions, and I do think this is a pretty good one to convert it into rec-if that we can put it into not only knowledge packets but also into other applications.
Great. Love the way you all are thinking. Final question. Do you typically have to do some manual adjustments to the KPACs created?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that really depends on the quality of the document. If the document is of high quality, then I find that it's very little. And what I mean by that is that if the document is structured with many levels, and then the knowledge that's being captured is already displayed at a very granular level in the document, you typically don't need to go back and then kind of adjust or manipulate them. However, if there's inconsistencies in that document, what you'll tend to see is the document ingester will get confused and it'll start to group more than one thing together. And there's an option before creation to go in and split the knowledge packets, to kind of split the results back to the way you would need them, and also to address any kind of maybe there's typos or things like that that were in the document that you don't want to put into the knowledge packet. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it does happen, and it really depends on the quality of the document.